Hello, YouTubers out there. This is going to be a discussion. It's not going to be a step-by-step how-to of how to replace ball joints on a JeepTJ. The JeepTJ that we got here is a 2001 SE with 2.5 liter four-cylinder engine, and basically doing almost a complete rebuild of the driver's side suspension, although that shock, while it's not young anymore, it's not shot. That link, I'm debating with whether or not to replace that, as I might as well, since I've got unfettered access to it. I'll make up my mind on that presently, and we're paused on this project, or I am paused on this project, because the brake caliper is, the cylinder is frozen, and I've ordered a replacement brake caliper, and I am currently waiting for it to come in. Now, I am going to proceed and put the ball joints in and so on, but I just wanted to talk about some footnotes related to this kind of an exercise, because I'm kind of going hog wild here, or all out, in the sense that I am going to be replacing the steering knuckle and a few other parts. I'm replacing the hub, and you can see the old hub right next to it. Going to replace the splash guard, although that dust cover for the brakes is not in bad shape, but the reason I bought it is because I've already rebuilt the passenger side, and on the passenger side there was very little left of that cover, so I bought both since I had to go to the dealer. That's a dealer only part. Come on, focus. Anyway, it's a dealer only part. I don't even know if they still sell it, because it seems like every time I look for Mopar parts for a 2001, there are fewer and fewer Mopar genuine parts available. But anyway, so I'm going to replace the steering knuckle, and again, that was something that came about from my experiences on this passenger side. This steering knuckle, while it's crusty, is not in absolutely terrible condition, but the passenger side steering knuckle was in horrendous condition, so I didn't have a choice but to replace it. So I decided, I guess, for yucks and giggles, that I would go ahead and replace the steering knuckle on the driver's side as well. Steering knuckle is not an original Mopar part. It is aftermarket. I got it from Quadratech. And the key thing to note here on the steering knuckle is that the stop, I really shouldn't use my calipers as a pointer, but anyway, the stop here for steering and the stop on the old knuckle, that bolt and nut are welded to the steering knuckle. I don't have welding equipment. I'm not a welder, and at this point I'm not interested in getting either or learning. So I've just used a generous quantity of Loctite red and hunkered down on that lock nut as best I could, and hopefully it'll stay, and that's just another item to add to the list of annual checks that I go through each year for this Jeep, looking for trouble spots. So, and the reason I have the calipers is because I measured the depth over here on this caliper to try and get it as close as I could on this side, and I came up with about a 19 millimeter depth. So that's one footnote. If you are contemplating, or you don't have a choice because the steering knuckle is damaged in some way, like on the passenger side, this bar up here was cracked, which led me to really no choice but to replace it. But if you have to change the steering knuckle, you're going to need to deal with that, because you cannot remove that bolt if you've got it, if your a steering knuckle that's on the car is original. The other thing to note is that this is a 3/8 by 24 by 1 inch bolt. So 3/8 diameter, 24 is the thread count, which means 24 threads per inch, and then it's 1 inch long. So and I also got it in stainless steel flavor because I didn't want to deal with the crusties on that. So that's one footnote if you're replacing the steering knuckle. Nothing really of note other than that for the steering knuckle. I will say you don't really need a relatively expensive set of calipers to set that depth on the stop. You can just do it with a ruler. It doesn't have to be super duper precise. It's just that I have a caliper, so why not use it? Okay, so moving on to the next point that I found. Also a similar situation on the on the passenger side rather, that I did last year, is that the drive shaft, this cap, end cap, dust cap, I would call it a dust cap, but the official part name appears to be an oil slinger, even though there's no oil involved. But it's not as crusty as the passenger side was, but it's still plenty crusty. So I bought a replacement. It's just a press fit, and hopefully it's focusing on that, but it's a Spicer part. And again, if you're doing searches, you may have better luck looking for a slinger or an oil slinger rather than a dust cap, because you won't find it if you try to describe it as a dust cap. I know because I've already had that experience. In this particular case, that U-joint is new, or relatively new. It's a little bit more than a year old, maybe close to 2 years old. No reason to replace that, so I'm not going to. And this hub definitely has seen better days, and although you can't see it or feel it, there's a certain grittiness to the turning here. So it wasn't on the agenda per se to replace the hub, but this is kind of a might as well. It's definitely past its prime. It's probably not shot, but I've got it all apart, so why not? Now, getting this hub off is a little bit of an adventure. As you can see, and I've left this on just for demonstration purposes, I had to cut the head off this bolt to get it off because it's frozen in place. And also because these bolts that hold the hub on are 12-point bolts, and they are 13 millimeter 12-point head. You may want to think about getting a 12 millimeter 12-point if you don't have it in your toolbox, because these bolts can get very crusty. Here's an old one, and although 2 of them came off, it was a bit of a fight, and as you can see, one of them I did cut off, and that led me to having to buy new bolts. And these are I think they're from Quadratech, and that's the part number 34201535. So you may want to think about, since you're going to have to take the hub off anyway, if it's crusty like my car is, you may want to think about getting those bolts. They're not super expensive. I think they were $3 a piece or $4 a piece, something in that neighborhood. And I have no intention of reusing the old bolts there, since they were a bear to get off. So might as well start fresh and with a good set of bolts that, of course, I'll put anti-seize on and put fluid film on and all that stuff, try and slow down the advancement of the crust for the next round or generation or what have you. The primary mission was to replace the ball joints. These are the 2 ball joints that I got, both of them Moog, And also the hub is a Moog hub. And these are the same parts that I put on the passenger side, so I'm just duplicating here for the sake of duplicating. So that's basically it. And oh, by the way, I might as well show you the slinger. This is the replacement slinger here, which I'll be able to tap off probably with a hammer and a screwdriver. The passenger side, this thing was severely rotted away, and it was a whole section that was gone. This one, as I said, it's a little beat up, but not quite as crusty. But since I have the part, I'm going to put it on. Oh yeah, one more thing. I'm going to pause the video here because there's another part that's a ways away I'm going to go grab, and so I'll be right back. Hang on. Okay, the other thing I wanted to point out, another might as well, when I took the axle off, this little dust cover sits on it like so and fits into that yoke, and this thing is, as you can see, damaged, and so I have ordered a replacement part for this. The interesting thing is, I don't know if it's probably too dark for the camera to pick it up, but there's a part number stamped on here. It says K1421. If you try to find that part on the internet, whatever, you're not going to find it. Eventually I found it, and I'll post it down below. I don't have it handy because that part has not come in the mail yet. It's on its way. And I'll post it down in the description of what the part number is and what the vendor was. I believe it was also Quadratech. But you're going to, you might want to take a close look at that and decide whether or not you should replace it. So that's basically it. I guess the only other thing I'll point out, I have a kit, and it's sitting up here on top of the Jeep, but there's probably not enough light up here. My ball joint removal kit is the Astro 7865. I believe I got it off of eBay, and I bought it off eBay, and there's a shot of it if it's not too dark. Not eBay, I bought it off Amazon, and bought it off Amazon because it was the cheapest or the next to cheapest kit that I could find. And there are a number of kits out there that are available for removing ball joints. And this kit is not specific to the Jeep. It's a generic kit. And this Jeep has got a little bit of weirdness to it when it comes to angles on this yoke. So the kit is not an exactly perfect fit. But what I will tell you is on the top ball joint, where is it? There it is. On the top ball joint, when I went to remove it, these pucks, like this one, go on the bottom, and there is not enough clearance on the bottom to completely push out the ball joint. Now, you could tell me that I'm just using the tool wrong, which is a possibility because I'm absolutely not a professional mechanic. I'm a backyard DIYer. I fix things as they need fixing. Although this is a project car, and I've been slowly working on it over the last 3.5 years. And this is the last of the significant mechanical work that I need to do on the vehicle. After that, from a suspension perspective anyway, and for a lot of other different parts, this vehicle is pretty much good to go. But anyway, what I did in order to gain the space for that top ball joint is I used the hub nut, which just turned out to be a good diameter because it fits up into the ball joint space without any interference, and it's just wide enough along with the ball joint tool to push that ball joint out. Now there is a risk, of course, and the risk is that if you do that, and you have a hard time with the bolt, you could wind up crushing that nut and needing to replace it. So just want to point that out, that was my improvised solution to the fact that this generic toolkit did not completely clear the top of the yoke in order for me to push the top ball joint out. I will say that for this particular side, the driver's side, the ball joints did not fight me all that much. The top ball joint, other than not having enough to push it out, not having enough clearance to push it out, the top ball joint didn't fight me at all, which I was relieved. The bottom ball joint fought me. It took about 15 minutes before it finally let go, and I was able to push it out. But it wasn't too bad compared to the passenger side, which took many, many hours of fighting and heating and cooling and heating and multiple cycles of using the torch on it before I finally was able to get it to move. So this side went relatively smoothly. Don't know how easily it's going to be to get the new ball joints back in, because again, the angles are such that the tool does not quite align correctly. And just by coincidence, happy coincidence, the Matt at Bleepin Jeep, who is a professional YouTube blogger on Jeeps and particularly off-road rock crawlers, he just recently, in the last week or two, posted on his YouTube page, which I'll put a link into it, in which he found a specific kit that you can use with that clamp that's specific to the Jeeps, and it takes into account the angles, the weird angles associated with this yoke, and makes the removal and presumably the installation much easier. Matt demonstrated only removal and didn't demonstrate reinstallation. But again, it's the angles that are the challenge, because the ball joints have to go straight in. They cannot go cockeyed. Otherwise, you could open yourself up to an absolute world of hurt where the ball joints could get stuck, like halfway or whatever, and cockeyed, and, you can't get them straight with just a hand clamp for all the tea in China, so, or all the cheap tools in China, whatever. So you have to be really careful to get those ball joints going in straight, and it's a challenge on this particular car because of the angles involved. And according to Matt, that specific kit of pucks and tubes and whatnot that is specifically for the JeepTJ apparently solves that problem. The downside is that it's expensive. Matt of Bleepin Jeep mentioned that it cost $80. So I'm not going to order that kit myself, since I put the passenger side together with this tool set. Although it did take me quite a while of I don't know, 24, who knows how many tries to get those ball joints to go in straight before they finally went in straight. But I'm just going to exercise some patience, some trial and error, and I might have to use maybe some washers or something as a shim on one side versus the other to account for the angles, so that the pressure goes down, exerts itself on the ball joint evenly. But that's my option, and if you want to take the tool way out, so to speak, you can take a look at Matt's YouTube video on the kit that he purchased and possibly use that as an alternative to make life easier for you. So that's it. That's it for my footnotes on how to swap ball joints and the kinds of issues that you can encounter. If you're going to replace the steering knuckle, you're going to have an issue with that bolt. And as I said before, it's a 3/8 by 1 by 24-inch thread, or 24 threads per inch rather, which could translate, some hardware stores and whatnot may consider that a quote fine unquote thread, but you've got to get the right thread count in order for that thing to go on properly, and then set the depth accordingly. And again, the drive shaft it's got that little dust cover on it. You might want to think about replacing that. And also the so-called oil slinger, even though it doesn't sling any oil, is likely going to be crusty, and you may want to think about replacing that. The rest is, you know, do what you got to do or do what you want to do. But I would definitely use caution on those 12-point bolts. And what happened to me on the one bolt that I had to cut the head off is because I put the 12-point socket on. It felt good. It felt okay in terms of its seating. And then when I applied the Milwaukee electric wrench to it, it just rounded over the 12 points on the head. And from that point, I was basically screwed. I did try to use vice grips and whatnot to get that bolt off, but it wouldn't budge. I tried heat, tried numerous attempts of using PV Blaster. Probably over a course of 3 days, I soaked it in PV Blaster. It wouldn't budge. So finally, I took a Dremel tool with a cutoff wheel and I cut off the back end of the bolt. And then, of course, knocked out the hub and the bolt came with it. So at least you know you can do that if you have no other choice. The other option that I had, because I already had the knuckle and knew I was going to be replacing the steering knuckle, you could get a Sawzall or a hacksaw and saw in between the hub and the knuckle to cut that bolt. But I thought that cutting the head off was a little bit the path of least resistance, so to speak. And I think I was right, but that is an option for you. Again, if you can't get those bolts off and you have to cut, that may be something for you to consider. Of course, if you're not replacing the knuckle, not the huckle. If you're not replacing the knuckle, then you don't want to do that. If that's the only thing you can do, then guess what? You've probably committed yourself to replacing that knuckle. I think that that pretty much covers it. I will say that tie rod end was replaced last year, so that's good. No need to mess with that at all. And the only other thing that I need to get, other than that brake caliper, which I'm going to be waiting for before I put this car back together, and that's on back order from Advanced Auto, which is the closest auto parts store to where I live. Pretty disappointing that they're making me wait a week for it, but they had a plastic pistoned version of that caliper available, and I said no thank you, I want a metal piston. That could be just me and superstition, and there's nothing wrong with plastic piston, but I just don't trust that what I consider cheap crap. So anyway, so that's where we are. So I hope that you have found these footnotes useful if you are looking at replacing your ball joints or getting a little bit more invasive as I have. I will tell you that on the passenger side, I also wound up replacing the U-joint because it was completely and totally shot. It was barely together, actually, and so I did replace the U-joint. I think that's the only thing additionally that I have done on the right-hand side of the car, other than what you see here that I'm about to do to the driver's side of the car. Looking forward to getting this back on the road, and I certainly will do a follow-up. I might edit it into this video, or I might post a second brief video of the car after everything's all back together. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for listening to me drone on for a while, and I hope that you have found this at least a little bit useful, and good luck if you're in the process of replacing your JeepTJ ball joints. See ya. Hey guys, just as a footnote to my footnote video, just to kind of underscore the point of why you may want to think about buying these little bits and pieces for your Jeep Wrangler before you start getting into ball joints and whatnot. is parts availability. I talked about this part here, which is this little dust cover for the axle, and it took 13 days for this part to show up at my doorstep. So while the weather was warmer, had all the opportunity in the world to replace the dust cover, and of course I didn't have the part and I had to wait, and then it got cold. Today we're having an uncharacteristically warm day. It's December 2018, and as you can see, I was starting to give up hope, so I put the axle back in. Now I'm going to take it out, put that part on, which is goes back in there, and then I'll be done. So that's it for the footnote to the footnote. See ya.